Can you subscribe to my new channel for support purposes? Galaxia Regnum was a place of unimaginable beauty, a jewel in the vast expanse of space, where the very atmosphere seemed to pulse with life and energy. The sky was an ever-changing canvas of colors, shifting from deep indigos to vibrant pinks and golds, a reflection of the galaxy's immense power and allure. Floating cities of crystalline spires and gleaming domes hovered above lush gardens, their bioengineered flora glowing softly in the twilight. It was in this majestic setting that the royal family of Galaxia Regnum ruled, their influence extending to the farthest reaches of the known universe. At the heart of this splendor stood the royal palace, a grand structure of iridescent stone and shimmering light. The palace was the epicenter of the galaxy's power, where decisions of cosmic importance were made. It was also the home of Princess Lyra and Prince Orion, the most revered figures in the galaxy, admired for their beauty, strength, and the promise of their union. Princess Lyra, the rightful heir to the throne, was the embodiment of grace and wisdom. Her silver hair flowed like liquid moonlight, and her violet eyes held the secrets of the cosmos. She was beloved by her people, not just for her regal bearing, but for her compassion and dedication to justice. Lyra's connection to the galaxy was deep, her very essence intertwined with the energy that powered the stars. Prince Orion, on the other hand, was the picture of charm and ambition. Tall, with sharp features and a commanding presence, he was every bit the warrior prince. His eyes, a piercing blue, seemed to see through to the very soul, and his smile could disarm even the most hardened of enemies. Together, Lyra and Orion were the epitome of power and beauty, their union seen as the ultimate symbol of the galaxy's strength. But as the galaxy celebrated its annual festival, a grand event that brought together beings from across the universe, something was amiss. The streets of the capital city were filled with laughter and music, the air thick with the scent of exotic flowers and the hum of joyous conversation. Yet, beneath the surface, there was a growing tension, unnoticed by the revelers but felt keenly by Lyra. She stood on the balcony of the palace, overlooking the festivities, her heart heavy with an inexplicable sense of dread. The festival was meant to be a time of joy, a celebration of the galaxy's unity and prosperity, but for Lyra, it felt like a hollow display. Orion had been distant lately, more so than ever before. He no longer shared the quiet moments with her that they once treasured. Their conversations had become strained, filled with silences that spoke of things left unsaid. Lyra's thoughts were interrupted by the sound of approaching footsteps. She turned to see Zara, her trusted right hand and closest confidante, approaching. Zara was a striking figure, with dark, sharp eyes and a presence that demanded respect. Her loyalty to Lyra was unwavering, and her instincts were rarely wrong. "Your Highness," Zara said, her voice tinged with concern. "You've been out here for hours. The guests are asking after you." Lyra forced a smile, though it didn't reach her eyes. "Let them enjoy the festivities." "I'll join them shortly." Zara studied her closely, sensing the turmoil beneath the calm exterior. "Is everything all right?" Princess Lyra hesitated, then sighed. "Orion has been distant. I can't shake the feeling that something is wrong, Zara. He's not the man I once knew." Zara's expression hardened. "Have you spoken to him about it?" "I've tried," Lyra replied, her voice barely above a whisper. "But he brushes me off, saying he's busy with matters of state. I'm not sure I believe him anymore." Zara frowned, a flicker of anger crossing her face. "If he's hiding something, we'll find out. I'll keep an eye on him, see if I can uncover anything." Lyra nodded, grateful for Zara's support. "Thank you, Zara. I don't know what I'd do without you." Zara bowed her head slightly. "I'm here for you, always." As Zara left to carry out her duties, Lyra remained on the balcony, staring out at the night sky. The stars seemed distant and cold, their light no longer comforting but instead a reminder of the vastness and isolation she felt. She couldn't shake the feeling that the stars themselves were watching her, whispering secrets she wasn't yet ready to hear. The night wore on, and eventually, Lyra joined the festivities, her smile as radiant as ever, though her heart was heavy. She moved through the crowd with practiced grace, accepting the well wishes and compliments of the galaxy's elite. But even as she smiled and laughed, her thoughts were elsewhere, fixated on the growing chasm between her and Orion. Later that night, as the festivities began to wind down, Lyra returned to the royal chambers, hoping to find Orion there. But the room was empty, the bed untouched. She sat on the edge of the bed, her mind racing. Where could he be? What could be more important than being with her on a night like this? Unable to sleep, Lyra decided to find him. She moved silently through the palace corridors, her heart pounding in her chest. As she approached Orion's private study, she heard voices: Orion's voice and someone else's, a voice she didn't recognize. She pressed herself against the wall, straining to hear. "We can't keep meeting like this," Orion was saying, his tone low and urgent. The other voice, soft and seductive, replied, "But you can't stay away, can you, my prince?" Lyra's breath caught in her throat. She peeked around the corner and saw them, Orion and a woman she had never seen before. The woman was stunning, with flowing hair that shimmered like gold and eyes that glowed with an unnatural light. They were standing close, too close, and the intimacy of their conversation left no doubt in Lyra's mind. Her world shattered in that moment. The man she loved, the man she had trusted with her heart, was betraying her. She felt a surge of anger, but it was quickly overwhelmed by a crushing sense of despair. She wanted to burst into the room, to confront them both, but her feet felt rooted to the ground. The woman reached up, touching Orion's face, and he closed his eyes, leaning into her touch. Lyra couldn't watch anymore. She turned and fled, tears streaming down her face as she ran through the palace corridors. She didn't stop until she reached the gardens, where she collapsed onto a bench, her sobs echoing in the silence. How had it come to this? What had she done to deserve such betrayal? The questions swirled in her mind, but there were no answers. All she knew was that the life she had known, the future she had dreamed of, was gone. As she sat there, her tears subsiding, a new resolve began to form in her heart. She would not be a victim of Orion's betrayal. She was Princess Lyra of Galaxia Regnum, and she would not let him or anyone else take her dignity and strength. But first, she needed to know the full extent of Orion's deceit. She would confront him, not as the heartbroken lover, but as the rightful heir to the throne. And if he had indeed turned against her, she would make him pay. The rule of Galaxia Regnum was clear: betrayal, especially within the royal family, was punishable by death, no matter the rank or position. Lyra stood, wiping the last of her tears away. She knew what she had to do. The crown she wore was not just a symbol of power, but of responsibility, and she would not allow anyone, not even Orion, to undermine it. The galaxy would soon learn that Princess Lyra was not to be trifled with, and Orion would learn that his betrayal had consequences far beyond what he had ever imagined. The following day, the palace was abuzz with activity, the remnants of the previous night's celebration still evident in the decorations and the lingering sense of exotic foods. Yet, beneath the surface, an uneasy tension had settled over the royal household. Lyra felt it in every glance, every whispered conversation that ceased when she entered a room. It was as if the palace itself was holding its breath, waiting for the inevitable storm. Lyra spent the morning in her chambers, mentally preparing for the confrontation she knew was coming. She had sent Zara to gather information about the mysterious woman she had seen with Orion. Zara, ever efficient, returned with troubling news. The woman's name was Selene, and she was not from Galaxia Regnum. She was from Celestara, a distant galaxy known for its powerful and enigmatic inhabitants. Selene's presence in the palace was highly unusual, as few from Celestara had ever set foot in Galaxia Regnum. Lyra's suspicions deepened. What business could Selene possibly have with Orion, and why had he kept it a secret? With Zara's information in hand, Lyra felt more determined than ever. She would confront Orion in his private chambers, away from prying eyes. The time for subtlety was over. She needed answers, and she would get them, no matter the cost. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a golden glow over the palace, Lyra made her way to Orion's chambers. The corridors were quiet, the servants having retired for the evening. She reached the door and hesitated for only a moment before pushing it open. Orion was there, standing by the window, looking out at the night sky. He turned as she entered, surprise flickering in his eyes. "Lyra," he said, his voice carefully neutral. "What brings you here?" Lyra closed the door behind her, her heart pounding. "We need to talk, Orion." He nodded slowly, sensing the gravity in her tone. "Very well. What is it?" She stepped closer, her eyes locking onto his. "I know about Selene." For a moment, there was silence. Then, a flicker of something guilt, perhaps, crossed Orion's face before he quickly masked it with indifference. Celine is an envoy from Celestara. Her visit is unofficial. Unofficial, Lyra repeated, her voice trembling with anger. You think I'm a fool, Orion? I saw you with her last night. I heard what you said to her. Orion's expression hardened. You were spying on me. Don't turn this around on me, Lyra shot back, her anger flaring. You've been lying to me, betraying me. Do you have any idea what you've done? He didn't answer immediately, instead turning back to the window. It's more complicated than you think. Lyra, then explain it to me, she demanded. Explain why you've been sneaking around with a woman from another galaxy. Explain why you've been neglecting me, your wife, your princess. Orion sighed, running a hand through his hair. Celine and I, we share a connection, something I haven't felt in a long time. I didn't mean for it to happen, but it did. Lyra felt as if the ground had been pulled out from under her. A connection? What about us? What about our connection? Orion looked at her then, his eyes filled with a mixture of guilt and frustration. Lyra, I haven't felt connected to you for a long time. Our marriage was always more about duty than love, and I grew tired of pretending. Lyra's heart shattered at his words. So you found someone else? Someone from another galaxy? Someone you could have a secret affair with while I stood by? Clueless, it wasn't supposed to be like this, Orion said quietly. But Celine, she makes me feel alive in a way I haven't felt in years. And what am I supposed to do with that? Orion, Lyra asked, her voice breaking. Stand aside while you parade her around. While you make a mockery of our marriage, of everything we've built. Orion turned away from her, unable to meet her gaze. I never wanted to hurt you, Lyra. But I can't change what's happened. Lyra felt a cold rage building inside her. You can't change what's happened, but you will face the consequences. You know the laws of Galaxia Regnum as well as I do. Adultery, especially by a member of the royal family, is punishable by death. Orion stiffened at her words, finally turning to face her. You wouldn't I? Lyra interrupted, her voice deadly calm. You've betrayed me, Orion. You've betrayed our galaxy. Do you think I'll just stand by and let you get away with it? For the first time, she saw fear in his eyes. Lyra, please. We can find a way through this. We can. Enough. Lyra's voice rang out, echoing off the walls of the chamber. You've made your choice, Orion. Now you must live with it. The door burst open, and Zara entered, flanked by royal guards. She took one look at the scene and knew what had to be done. Your orders. Princess Lyra's gaze never left Orion's as she spoke. Take him to the dungeons. He is to be held there until we decide his fate. Orion's eyes widened in shock. Lyra, you can't do this, but Lyra's resolve was unshakable. Take him. The guards moved swiftly, seizing Orion by the arms. He struggled briefly, but then resigned himself to his fate, his expression one of disbelief and growing dread. As they led him away, he looked back at Lyra, his voice desperate. Lyra, don't do this. Please. But she turned away, refusing to let him see the tears that threatened to fall. She stood there, alone in the chamber, as the door closed behind them. The weight of what she had done settled heavily on her shoulders, but she knew it was necessary. Orion had made his choice, and now he would face the consequences. Lyra walked to the window, looking out at the night sky. The stars were as distant as ever, cold and unfeeling. She wondered if they had always been this way, or if it was only now that she could see them for what they truly were. In the silence of the chamber, Lyra allowed herself to grieve, not just for the man she had lost, but for the future they would never have. But even as she grieved, a new determination took root in her heart. She would not let this betrayal define her. She would not let Orion's actions destroy everything she had worked for. She was Princess Lyra of Galaxia Regnum, and she would rise above this, stronger than ever. The galaxy would soon see that she was not just a victim of betrayal, but a force to be reckoned with, and Orion would learn that some actions could never be undone. Don't forget to subscribe.